your blue skies. I miss your clear blue skies and drinking water streams. I miss your mountains. I miss your sunrise and your watercolor scenes. Ooh, Alaska, I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
For 6 years, Jay Hammond and his crew have journeyed across Alaska. Down the trail, they met over 68 unique Alaskans, doing unusual, uplifting, often courageous things in a land they trade for no other. As a pilot, commercial fisherman, writer, homesteader, and former governor, Jay's life mirrors the character and spirit of those Alaskans who have carved out a life to their own design. Alaskan is proud to have sponsored the Jay Hammond's Alaska series, an enduring tribute to the grandeur of Alaska's land and the warmth of its people. Join us for a celebration of the wonderful people who call Alaska home.
Alaska, I'm coming home.
How about that?
Alaska.
How did your little dog get hurt, Norma?
Oh, a bigger dog attacked her this morning, and I think it picked her up by the back, and she's got a puncture.
Some swelling, but it doesn't feel like it went too deep. Guess what? You have to have your temperature taken.
Most all of us love our pets, yet until we lose one, we often are unaware of what an important role they play in our lives. To keep them healthy and with us as long as possible, we bring them to an animal hospital, like this one where we'll find Dr. Jim Scott. Jim has been a vet for over 28 years, but his is no ordinary practice. Besides the care he gives to our more commonplace pets such as cats, dogs, mice, and perhaps even snakes, Jim's prime passion is for the birds. Most of his feathered friends are from the wild, and as Jim says, they don't carry pocketbooks.
I miss your blue skies. I miss your clear blue skies and drinking water streams. I miss your mountains. I miss your sunrise and your watercolor scenes. Ooh, Alaska, I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
For 6 years, Jay Hammond and his crew have journeyed across Alaska. Down the trail, they met over 68 unique Alaskans, doing unusual, uplifting, often courageous things in a land they trade for no other. As a pilot, commercial fisherman, writer, homesteader, and former governor, Jay's life mirrors the character and spirit of those Alaskans who have carved out a life to their own design. Alaskan is proud to have sponsored the Jay Hammond's Alaska series, an enduring tribute to the grandeur of Alaska's land and the warmth of its people. Join us for a celebration of the wonderful people who call Alaska home.
Alaska, I'm coming home.
How about that?
Alaska.
with the beautiful waters of Resurrection Base around Seward, Alaska, you'll find the Kenai Fjords National Park. The park is rich with whales, waterfowl, and other wildlife. Helping preserve the luster of this national treasure is the fact that it can only be reached by boat. Tours into the Kenai Fjords were started over 10 years ago by two intrepid Seward women, Pam Aldo and Sheila Scobie.
There's a little brown bird sitting on the left-hand side here.
Pam serves as skipper and guide through this marine treasure trove.
See one little harbor seal. He's quite high up on the rock over here. They blend right in with the rocks, too. They look so much like, their coloring is so much the same.
Oh, look at how sweet. Come on, look over here.
While Pam takes passengers out to the fjords, Sheila handles the business here on shore, since a back injury has kept her in port.
Pam skippered the vessel, and I was the hostess, and then we did have a deckhand. It took 3 of us that first summer. We put about 3,000 people through the park. I had to leave the vessels a couple of years ago I had some back surgery, and they suggested I maybe diversify and do something else and stay off the boats.
For Sheila, giving up cruising the Kenai Fjords was a great sacrifice. However, both still share with others their love of the wildlife and the water.
And we saw that really, that everyone deserved to see this wonderful place.
What do you find is the most appealing to those who come here for the first time?
Because of the spill, the sea otters were a popular subject, of course, and everyone wanted to see the sea otters. But the puffins are number one.
That's it. Mostly that's it. Number one.
The puffins are number one. I do think the glacier, the sound and the sight of that is awesome for everyone. You can hear it before you can see anything happening, just like an earthquake almost. There are sounds, there are squeaks and cracks and snaps and moans.
What about the orchids?
You're hearing life, just a tremendous amount of energy. And you look down and see the air escaping, and you hear them. Sometimes you can hear them before you really see them.
I don't know what to say, because when I'm up there, sometimes I forget that I even have anybody else on the boat. It's just like going on a tour all by myself. Quite a lot of bird action up there on the right. There has to be a lot of little feed fish in there. That's the sweetest thing you've ever seen.
Realtor with her baby.
Out of the crest, I think I see some over here on the crest that I might be able to get you close to. Yeah, one is just sticking his wings out there, as a matter of fact. An old tufted puffin.
The cows and the calves stay here all winter. God, that must be a tough winter, huh?
I never have been able to decide or to determine whether I enjoy the animals more than the people or the people more than the animals, but I think it's just about even.
Somebody lost his hat, so...
Can you get it? There you go.
How you put it on?
That's
People come from all over the world to enjoy the wonders of the Kenai Fjords, some every summer, while others from farther away may save a long time for but one special trip.
Well, it's been a dream of ours. We've worked hard and saved our money and said someday we're going to Alaska when we can go and stay as long as we want to.
Every day it's new to each one of those people going out, and every individual is different, and they see it from different eyes.
I think just beautiful. I really think people have to come here themselves to see what it's all about. I think it makes you appreciate what we have here in America.
Tell me a little bit about Cease's place and how it's got its name.
My dad knew that I wanted to be cremated and put in the Chiswell Islands, and so when he became very ill, he did ask me how I felt about him being here too with me, and I said I think it would be just wonderful. So he is just in this little bight over here. This is totally untouched by man. No one is allowed on shore, and it's wild, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's where I want to be forever. By the way, Wendy, wherever you are, your whales are here. Oh, look! Oh, look here. Oh, look at these guys are coming right towards us. That's a pretty beautiful big whale, too. Woo, you're a darling. Usually I get a lot more excited than this, but I looked for them for so long, and I thought I'm not going to see them.
You don't really believe it until you see it, that even if they say that.
We bring people out here, and I've seen tears rolling down their face because they just say they just did never expect anything ever to be as beautiful.
They don't realize what's out there to be seen. They don't realize how awesome nature really is. John Burroughs, he says, I go to nature to be soothed and healed and to have my senses put in order once more. And I think we all feel that way. That's what it does for you out there.
There's something about the sound of an axe on wood that I really love.
Yeah, that heavy axe really helps. Yeah. That extra 2 pounds.
Art Mannix at Talkeetna is a master log cabin builder who is inspired by his work with wood.
The wood doesn't talk back to me, and it gives me a lot of time to reflect, and I get really inspired by it. Oh, this is a little place that my brother and I built for Jim Ochnick.
Here, in this beautiful area, Art has poured that inspiration into handcrafted log cabins like this one.
These are the style of corners that my brother and I prefer to do now, as opposed to the round notch corner. They're called half Norwegians. And essentially what you do is you shape the log to a wedge shape at the corner work. And so that gives the log on top something to continually go down and harden on the log below.
Those lucky enough to live in one of Art's creative cabins marvel at his wonderful work with hand tools. Art, in turn, marvels that what to others might seem tiresome labor provides him with great satisfaction and pleasure.
Webster's dictionary defines labor as the services provided by workers for wages, as distinguished from those rendered by entrepreneurs for profit. And I don't know what kind of a workday Daniel Webster put in his day, or if he ever really got with the program and broke a sweat. But I think he belittles labor in that definition. He mentions nothing of the dignity of labor, nor of the joy of effort.
Ready?
Arms taut, brains not.
And so Art and his friend Scott Holcomb are motivated by their love for physical labor and moved by respect for a time long gone by. A time when a tool was dependent on power provided by the hands of the craftsman.
Just seeing those axe marks, it just harkens back to a time when life wasn't such a high RPM kind of situation.
And you know, it's kind of neat. I can really appreciate what the old timers, you know, how hard they had to work to get what they had, you know, by using these old tools.
Art and Scott are rewarded with a glimpse into the past as they restore this cabin built in 1918.
We even have a photo of Bill McDonald, who was one of the original occupants of this cabin. She was a pretty staunch pioneer type who was married to one of the early gold miners in the Cache Creek area.
Inspired by a deep respect for the old-timers' work, they try to preserve both the style of labor and the actual logs left by those early pioneers. I notice here we have a splice blending one old log with a new one.
Originally, we had just intended on
replacing the entire
all three logs.
But this half of the log was sound, and we thought, you know, yeah, we could just take it all out and throw that away, but we thought this still has value, so we decided that, you know, it would look kind of good to use something old, you know, and then blend it into the new, which, you know, we had to replace this half.
We found it kind of a more, kind of almost a symbolic or just an aesthetic blending, splicing of the old with the new.
One day, as Scott explored the attic of the old cabin, he unexpectedly discovered some things which brought them even closer to the shades of those early pioneers.
Hey, Arthur, check these out. Look, here's an old 1938 Look magazine.
Oh, wow. All right,
in
these
those
are
magazines.
great. These are great.
Check out these ads in the back here.
I take Ovaltine as a regular nightcap
because
Hitler's sanity question.
Also, Alaska Daily Empire. Quake spreads havoc. What's the date? September 8th, 1920.
Art brought his love for a simpler, slower-paced lifestyle home when he built his own cabin by hand with the help of his wife, Karen. This is a combination woodshed and what?
Oh, Karen's glass studio.
I've been cutting glass for about 6 or 7 years. Well, I've been supplying local gift shops with smaller pieces, and I tend to be really busy in the spring and summer trying to keep inventory up.
This is all mortise and tenon into here?
Yeah.
Or what?
Essentially, all the posts have these tongues or these tenons going down through mortises or holes that connect these the two sills, interlocking sills, and then the pegwork holds the tenon in. I have sort of a personal mandate to build structures that will stand for at least as long as it takes to grow the trees to replace what's used in their construction.
What do you got over here now?
Well, that's Pinch Pond Power and Light. It's an integrated system. We're tied in with the generator as well, and what this does is this enables us not to have to run the generator for just our household needs. It seems from 2 weeks either side of the equinox, from about March 7th to October 7th. These panels are standalone in providing all of our energy needs for our house, for the house, and for Karen's stained glass shop. We keep a log of what our fuel consumption is, firewood and gas and that sort of thing. And propane for all of our needs is about 123 gallons a year.
A year?
Yeah.
Boy.
And I don't know, sucking up a lot of fossil fuels to me is akin to going to a banquet where there's a buffet and there's a long line of people waiting at for their share, and you're one of the first in line, and you go and heap the food on top of your plate there, and without really looking who's behind you in line. And I think even in times of plenty, I think it's kind of ethical to live with somewhat of a tight belt.
Be more aware of it. I mean, that's pretty standard stuff, but I don't think you see a lot of people practicing it.
Karen and Art cherish a lifestyle where artistic achievement and labor combine to enrich their everyday lives. Though they often wish time would slow down so they could longer savor each hour rather than having them stream through their fingers like uncounted coins. Both have found great wealth in lives simply lived.
A lot of it is peace of mind and almost feeling as though you have more of a hand in molding the kind of life that you aspire to live. And indeed, being here, it's humbling how lucky we are to have what we've got, you know, and even though by some standards it's not a lot, I just think it's rich beyond measure.
A lot of our history plays a very important part in our lives. So the people take pride in the clan system in which they belong. I think it becomes a reminder to or depict where we actually come from.
These majestic monuments in cedar are among our finest examples of Northwest coastal art. Each totem pole employs the painstaking hard work of the early masters and are eloquent tributes to their talent and effort. Nathan Jackson, whose Tlingit name is Ravenchild, is one of the greatest living practitioners of this fine art. Using tools he handcrafted himself, Nathan meticulously sculpts each totem, stroke by stroke. His work often is commissioned years ahead and is found gracing the planet all the way from Paris to Juneau.
And I had Lee Wallace help me on that.
Look at this work here. Isn't that great? Each mark, of course, represents a single stroke.
Each stroke. Yeah.
How many million do you assume you've done over the years?
I don't know.
I mean, there's an incredible number of strokes here. This is the traditional technique. The old-timers did the same sort of thing with an adze, right?
Yeah, it appears that way with a lot of the existing totem poles. Sometimes they'd be so good on their adzing that you can actually stick your little finger in each one and they'd be just right and so even all the way down. They were really good.
Nathan's latest project is a pole that will join those of other master carvers at the Totem Bite Park in Ketchikan. Apparently this pole is of special interest. Tell me a little bit about it.
Our master carver pole. I think one of the things about this particular pole is the workmanship on it. The top figure has a beaver. Behind the beaver, I think, is a sea monster. Then a raven. Below that, then a bear. Looking a little bit closer, I can see even the adzing on it. And then below that, on the frog, holding two tina, which is money pieces representing prestige. And then a killer whale. Then comes the master carver, all decorated up in regalia with a necklace of men there. That could very well be representing the actual carvers that worked under him. And then I think it's an eagle down on the bottom.
The intricacy, I would think, is much more detailed than most.
Yeah, it's really super detailed and super symmetrical and a lot of depth and feeling, and so that the person who is doing this, John Wallace, really put his best effort into it.
Nathan's appreciation of Northwest coastal art is shared by his wife Dorica, who as well has a passion for Chilkat weaving. Her fascination for Northwest coastal Indian art drew her to Alaska to study the surviving old masters. When she went to hear Nathan Jackson lecture, she thought he'd be as venerable as his reputation.
I was real excited about getting a chance to meet him.
Meet this old fellow.
Yeah, I was expecting to meet this old fellow. And I walked in, and I think he was in the middle of a talk, and I asked somebody, I didn't know that was him, and I asked somebody where Nathan Jackson was, and whoever it was that was working there at the museum said, well, that's him talking, and probably my mouth dropped open, my eyes bugged out, and I said, that's Nathan Jackson? He was wearing a black turtleneck, had real black hair, very striking looking. And we started talking about art, and I said I was going to learn Chilkat weaving, and he said, well, why don't you do a pair of Chilkat leggings for me, and I'll do some of my artwork for you. And so he made up this little list of things he was going to do for me, a frog dish and a mask and a bracelet and something else, and I was going to weave the leggings for him. And I did get the bracelet, and I did get the frog dish, but I never did get the mask.
Did he get his leggings?
Yeah, he got his leggings, and I got him.
Okay.
That was my big catch.
Their appreciation of Northwest coastal art is a family affair. Dorica paints while Nathan carves, assisted by his son Steve. You two obviously have a good, solid spiritual conviction that has acted as a cement in your marriage and your relationship over the years. Was it always so in both your lives, or?
Not me.
Not really, huh?
No, I didn't become a Christian until, just right before we were married, pretty much.
Before I've come to the Lord, I used to kind of entertain a little bit in the bars. Now I'm playing in our church. I play harmonica pretty regularly. I enjoy playing. The heavy drinking crowd that I used to hang out with was always the old buddies. In this situation, there's no more of the old buddies. They didn't play any part in my life anymore. You begin to think about what you're doing with your life. You know, you don't direct your thoughts too much to the past. It certainly has made a difference. A direction, a guidance, being able to love each other.
In carving, what gives you the greatest satisfaction? What do you find most pleasurable or interesting about carving?
More than anything else is probably just to get it out of sight. In other words, as soon as you get done with it, and some of these commissions of people that have been asking, waiting in line for stuff, as soon as it's over with, and that's I think probably the better. It's a relief.
Complete.
Sometimes you kind of wonder, even then, what am I doing? Why am I doing this type of thing? But to do something of great significance, to me, that makes me feel pretty good. So one of the things that I like is doing something that is monumental. And that's going to stick around a lot longer than I am going to stick around.
We've enjoyed visiting many Alaskans who hunt for and harvest the Earth's natural resources, from whaling and barrow, farming in Matanuska Valley, and even set netting near my own home in Bristol Bay. Now we'll meet hunters of a different sort, who harvest with computers and cameras. And their elusive prey is not of this earth. The Aurora Borealis. Its mystery and majesty have held us spellbound since the beginning of recorded history. Even the early Babylonians wrote on their stone tablets of their awe for the red glow they saw in the northern sky.
For people in the United States who want to see the aurora, this is the place to come.
At the Geophysical Institute at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, Tom Hallinan has been capturing the aurora on video camera. Tom was lured to northern Alaska by the glow in the sky over 25 years ago, and he's been stalking it ever since.
As a kid in a geography book in 4th grade, I read about how people way up north in exotic places like Alaska could see these beautiful lights shimmering in the sky and that nobody knew what caused them. Well, that fascinated me. Later, when I was in college, I became very interested in low light level television cameras. And as time went on, I became more and more interested in what it was that I was looking at. The energy that drives the aurora actually comes from the sun in the form of a wind of charged particles, the solar wind. And that wind is deflected by the magnetic field of the Earth. It sails around the backside of the Earth and gets lost, goes off into outer space. But a small fraction of it somehow gets inside the Earth's magnetic field and then comes back in along the magnetic field and reaches the Earth's atmosphere that way. How this energy gets trapped into the magnetic field of the Earth is very poorly understood. Another question is why the aurora is so almost explosive, that you'll go out there and be looking, see maybe just a quiet arc that's not doing anything at all, and then suddenly you can fill the entire sky with forms racing around, and it's an extremely beautiful, exciting phenomenon. It's really a lot of fun to go look at the aurora, and I think that's why people have been so interested in this rather obscure phenomenon for so many years, because it's fun.
What I want to do more than anything is give you the feeling that you're watching the Northern Lights, and that's where the photo symphony part, that's where the symphony part of the program comes in. By projecting the aurora big, I hope I give you more of a feeling of what it's like spread across the skies. Something happens when you see the auroras, and I hope I can kind of recreate that magic here tonight with this concert.
Leroy Zimmerman of Esker outside of Fairbanks shares his passion for the aurora with others by using his camera, slide projector, and music, creating what he calls photo symphonies. These he presents on 3 large screens. Leroy plays projectionist, photographer, composer, and ticket taker in the theater he converted from an old community firehouse.
Little system I made up to film my aurora panoramas. Got 3 of them mounted on one bracket, and I could change the angles of the side cameras here.
Why 3 cameras instead of something like a fisheye lens, or what do they call some of the things that are available?
Well, most of my panoramas that I film with one camera, I can take 3 separate images of each picture. But when you film something that's moving, you need all 3 cameras opening and closing at the same time. And to get them to do that, I had a friend of mine make me a 3-way cable release. Tie one into each camera like this, and you can fire them all at the same time. And they all fire together, count out the seconds for time exposure, let them shut, and move on to the next frame.
Like many devoted Alaskan artists, Leroy has perfected the art of making ends meet.
It's really a perfect part-time job. It takes 2 hours each afternoon, and so that certainly doesn't interfere with filming in the evenings. Part of the magic of the paper route, too, is you're outside every single day. You see the seasons come and go. You're constantly thrusting yourself into Alaska. I mean, I think of the people with their part-time jobs working at those convenience stores and so on, and I think I wouldn't trade with them for anything. I mean, sure, I'd like to make a living off my photography, and I think that's coming. One thing I always like to tell people is I'm not a newspaper carrier that takes pictures. I'm a photographer that delivers papers.
How do you know when the aurora is out? You can't spend 24 hours a day sky watching.
Oh, I like to watch a lot, but I can't constantly watch, so I have a lot of friends that work night shifts, and I have a system set up to where they notify me when the auroras are in the sky. I think it was clear tonight, wasn't it?
It was when I came home.
Yeah? I wonder who's our letterman tonight.
Let's see what's going on up here.
My friends will call up, let the phone ring twice, and hang up, and I know someone is telling me that the northern lights are overhead.
Are you ready for this?
I built a little room that sticks up above the house roof. I like to go up there with my son, and we sit up there and talk and watch from inside.
Yeah, this could turn into something tonight. Look at it over there. You see it? Oh, wow. Yeah, I like that. Look at some red in there.
I feel like a fireman.
Yeah, they're showing
Not very
up.
intense yet.
Turned out to be a good night.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Tell me what, some folk might question the sanity of anybody coming out here in the middle of the night, 40 below or whatever. What prompts you to do it?
I was down here at the city, and I know most people are sleeping. They're not seeing the roar that you and I are seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame, because we're living in Fairbanks, is right under the most active aurora zone in the world. And it's a perfect spot to be.
It's a real treat to be up at 1 o'clock in the morning on top of the hill up here filming Northern Lights, and you look down at the city below you and you realize that everybody's sleeping. There's very few people even seeing what's happening right above their heads. And it's a magic time for us to be up there by ourselves.
Okay, we're ready.
Coming to Alaska, the whole state unfolded before me, things I've never seen. And the auroras were the crown of this whole thing. You don't know whether to jump up and down and scream or stand there with your mouth hanging open or get down on your knees and pray, but you know you're seeing something that's magic. I know the auroras have probably been going on for millions of years on this earth, and I've certainly missed thousands of years of displays, and after I'm gone from this planet, I'm going to miss another thousands of years. But I'm here for right now, and I'm going to see every one of them I can. That's not going to get away from me, because there is some magic on this planet.
One of our most impressive Alaska treasures is the Wrangell St. Elias National Park. Among the glaciers and peaks lie visual reminders of days gone by. Early pioneers pried over $200 million worth of silver and copper in these hills. Hundreds of people worked the Kennecott copper mines and lived in the town called McCarthy. In 1938, the mines gave out and the people moved on, leaving an abandoned mine and a ghost town. Here, people had lived and worked, thrived, and raised their families. When you enter McCarthy, it feels like you're entering the early 1900s, a glimpse back into history and a walk back into time. The rusty remains of their railroad track speaks of the almost 600,000 tons of copper and 9 million ounces of silver taken from here, as do the empty houses, dance halls, and mills speak of the people who lived and worked in them. But while hundreds of folks left when the mine gave out, a few special folk had been drawn back by the solitude and rich history. Jim and Jean Miller live a traditional homestead lifestyle here. Rich Kirkwood runs the Kennecott Glacier Lodge, while Gary and Betty Hickling have carved out their lives around their McCarthy Lodge.
We're in a dynamic state of evolution in McCarthy-Kennicott that has a link to the past in two phases, the present, and now we're trying to, I think what we're trying to do is write a script for the future. So between 1918 and 1938, this was a flourishing business.
Roy Green is resident philosopher and sometimes musician. A unique soul who has been a storehouse of knowledge of the area for over 25 years.
Kind of.
Lloyd, what did this structure used to be?
Well, this is one of the, in fact, this is one of the madam's houses that operated some of the houses. Very integral part of McCarthy. It wasn't really a bad area. You know, it depends on who you were in McCarthy.
Of course, I've never been there, Lloyd, so I'll have to take your word for it.
10 years ago, you could have come into almost any of the buildings here, including this one, and you'd have been enough material, enough roof to go on ahead and fixed it up and moved into it now.
Yeah, that's too bad. Now, this was the old bar, you say?
The old Golden, the bar.
Golden bar.
Yeah, which was, as you'll see by the photographs shortly, this was the main street, Shoshana Avenue, which most of the businesses were on this street. And, of course, this was one of the liveliest bars in town.
How many bars were there?
Off and on. Well, actually, it depended on whether you're in Prohibition days or a little after. Now, during Prohibition, these were soda fountains.
I see.
That is when the feds weren't here.
And what this used to be here, Lloyd?
Yeah, this was kind of a, well, it was a hardware merchandise store. And I think if you look in, you can see that there's still items on the shelves.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting right there is an old radio that might even be, maybe we could tune it in here.
I'll be darned. Is this in the park?
McCarthy-Kennicott is now a calm, tranquil place, preserved by the dedication of its residents, and helped by the fact that it can only be reached by air and hand-operated tram.
I like the remoteness, you know. I like, that's what gives you the bush attitude, is how hard it is to get out there. The main thing is the independence on ourselves, that Betty and I or myself can rely on ourselves enough to be able to do it, like fix a generator or get a truck unstuck with.
The limited access means living here can be challenging and rewarding. The visitors who come to Gary and Betty Hickling's lodge often come across the tram with their groceries.
Well, Gary, you tell me that you've had the opportunity to handle or love 8 times every item that you bring into the area. Explain that to me.
This is the way our shopping trips usually go. Betty says, okay, dear, after you close the bar, you can sweep and mop and we'll see you later. You can go. So I leave here about 2 a.m. and I drive all the way to town until 8, and then I start shopping. We call it shop till you drop. So we go to Costco, and you'll see me out there in the parking lot sometimes taking it out of the box and putting it into these special shipping crates. We bought these plastic boxes that fit into the tram easily. I'll repack them, so that's once. Then I'll drive it all the way out and we'll hit the tram. We unload it off the truck into the tram, zing it across the river, unload it off the tram into a truck. We drive it across the island, unload it off that truck into another tram, zing it across, unload it out of the tram into another truck, bring it up and stock it into our stockroom.
8 it is. What is it that you have found most appealing about this area?
I'm a history buff, and I fell in love with the history of the area. There's so much here. Kennicott was a monumental feat of construction and production in its day. McCarthy has a whole nother history. It was where all the whorehouses and the bars were, and it had people with personalities that, you know, wouldn't quit, that made this town revolve. And the history is my second forte to being married to my husband.
It's this pride and respect for history that makes the past blend into the present. To many, more riches remain behind than were taken away.
the curator?
Curator.
What it used to be.
Well, this was the old railroad depot. In fact, this is the only one left on the entire line. Well, Jay, this is the beginning of the pictorial history.
As Loy showed me the old photos, I wondered about McCarthy and Kennecott's future. The fiercely independent people here were not drawn by the riches in the mountains, but by something deep inside each of them. And unlike the people before them, who aspired to certain communal amenities, here you won't find any government, schools, or phones, and no desire for them.
We're all individuals, and very few individuals. Everybody is self-sufficient that is here. If any person, that if everybody else would leave and only that person is here, would continue to survive.
It's the first year Jeannie and I lived here. I was out hauling firewood, and an elderly gentleman lived downtown at the time, him and his wife. And I'd got my snow machine a little bit stuck, a little bit too big a load, as most greenhorns would have at the time. And this gentleman pulled up on his snow machine, an elderly gentleman, and I asked him, I said, you know, if you just give me a little pusher, I could probably have this snow machine out and gone in a second. And he looked at me just about as sober as you could be, and he says, if you can't do it by yourself out here, Sonny, you're not going to get it done. He started his snow machine up and drove off. I was so upset. I was so mad. I thought, how could this guy be so arrogant? But he taught me a good lesson.
And they learned their lesson well. Jim operates the local shuttle. They have a substantial garden, raise their livestock.
Okay, Matthew, did you read this?
Mm-hmm.
And what was it talking
Their
about?
living room is a home school for their children.
You didn't read this part. Okay, so...
Tell me what you've seen in the way of change and what you anticipate you'll see in the way of change. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
We've seen a lot more tourists come in the summertime. I'd say when we first moved out here, we were lucky if we saw 50 people a summer. And now they're calculating in the thousands, more like 10 to 12,000 a summer.
With the help of the National Park Service, more and more tourists are finding McCarthy Kennecott. Here they can actively explore the area's natural beauty, sample local fare, or simply sit back and enjoy the solitude. Once here, visitors are struck with the richness of the area's history.
The people that come here are all very interested in Kennecott, and I hear many, many times what's being done to save this place. It's a real shame that it's falling down.
Rich Kirkwood, who built and operates the Kennecott Glacier Lodge, enjoys both the tourists and the tranquility, but knows that time is ticking away at these historical buildings.
It's kind of saddening to me to see the place deteriorating as much as it is. One of the reasons that I built the lodge is to try and get people to come here and enjoy the area and the beautiful surroundings, and to appreciate the fact that we have a historical resource here of both statewide and national significance that is in need of some attention.
And how do we go about that? Now, one is asking the government to come in there with their funds and do it. And that'd be fine, but strings come along with them. What's going to happen when all the people start coming in and start laying the demands down? That's when the change is going to happen.
And as a business person, that's wonderful. But I personally prefer to promote quality rather than quantity. I think there's a good enough living to be made out of that. And I think it's a real delicate area to the point of getting enough people out here to make a living and not destroying what's here.
In a way, it's selfish to keep this a secret. It really is. All we need to do is find a way to retain what we have. And it all revolves, I think, around access.
Sometimes a hindrance is also a saving grace. When a state bridge was built to McCarthy in the early 70s, thousands of tourists showed up on the doorstep of 25 residents. 1 year later, the bridge washed away, and now the tram helps to preserve the community's sense of privacy and balance. There may be only one thing these independent folk agree upon, and that's no more bridges.
Well done, Richard.
When we first came here, their bridges were still in, and people could drive into town. There was motorhomes, Winnebagos, people looting, having a good time, and not thinking if anybody's could care less. This is my recreational time, and I'm going to have a good time while I'm here.
When a person parks their car and takes the effort to come across, those people, they see the sweat and they put out and they emit friendliness. And that is a quality that we all look for. And that's what this place is all about.
The attitude is, I think, right down the line of preserving what we have, but allowing the people to actually be here and enjoy what we have. And it's a delicate balance.
As I glimpsed into the lives of a few McCarthy-Kennecott residents, the present seemed secure in this delicate balance. The past was viewed with pride, and the future held in their hands was full of promise. Because unlike the people before them, they're here to stay.
Can you envision yourself living anyplace else?
At this point, Jay, no. I see this as a flourishing, imaginative, creative, and evolving community, so it has a lot of stimulation. It still retains the essence of why I'm here.
Do you envision any likelihood of you leaving in the near or not distant future?
I don't think so.
No, it's our niche. We seem to have found it.
I'm going to die in McCarthy. The only thing that will ever change that is if the face of McCarthy entirely changes, and I'm not happy here anymore.
You're content to stay here as long as McCarthy remains McCarthy, huh?
Yes.